Within the realm of uncertainty lie myths, stories, never entirely believed, but never entirely doubted. The explorer searches for their origins, the answers to who we are.
For centuries, legend maintained that the last of the Incan leaders had escaped capture by the Spanish conquistadores and retreated to a hidden city high above the clouds. Only in modern times has the legend proved to have a basis in fact with the discovery of Machu Picchu.
Concealed in the jungle, this once lost city is now a portal to a vanished civilization. The more we discover, the more we want to know.
Dateline Egypt, in the shadows of the giant pyramids that stood as lonely sentinels over the vast desert sands. A 1922 archaeological expedition headed by Englishman Howard Carter sought to uncover the tomb of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, King Tutankhamun.
I carefully drew back the boat and opened the door.
Hidden for centuries, the final resting place of the boy king made its contribution to modern man's clearer understanding of his ancestors. The mountains of Ararat, the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. History calls this the cradle of civilization.
The seeds of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity all came from that region.
Steeped in antiquity, this area has yielded countless discoveries, like the 1799 unearthing of the Rosetta Stone.
The stone bore 3 inscriptions, ancient hieroglyphs at the top, another unknown text, and at the bottom, ancient Greek.
So by translating the Greek, scholars were now able to decipher the hieroglyphs. Another find, the Dead Sea Scrolls have been called the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times. They show the evolutionary link between Judaism and Christianity.
It just completely changed our understanding of the Bible. We didn't have any idea that these even existed.
But it was archaeologists traveling through layers of time who, in the 1850s, unearthed cuneiform clay tablets containing an ancient story about a great flood, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which has similarities to the story of Noah.
The great gods decided to make a deluge.
Genesis 6. So God said to Noah,
I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them.
The story of Noah is told many times in the Quran. In the story itself, Noah is informed that there's going to be a great flood. After many years of preaching to his people, very few followers actually believed in him and his message, and so he was informed by God to build this ark.
So make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in it and coat it with pitch inside and out.
Take into the boat the seed of all living things.
I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens.
What prompts the deity, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, to send the flood has nothing to do with that the humans are procreating and creating noises and disturbances, but rather their ethical behavior.
Every living thing that moved on land perished.
The rains start falling and also water start gushing up.
Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. But God remembered Noah, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded.
When we've studied the flood, and from a comparative perspective, is that we see it in every culture. The flood was a very common story told, that something happened, and there was an ark that saved humankind.
And on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat.
Did you go clear to the top?
Well, we got up on the ice cap. We didn't get to the...
Did you see the ark itself?
Early history notes many such sightings of the Ark.
In the 3rd century, Berosus wrote that its location was such that common people could visit.
Egyptian historian Hieronymus mentions the Ark.
Josephus wrote of the vessel in 50 AD.
Epiphanes, bishop of Salamis, stated that he was shown wood from the vessel. Armenian historian Hython wrote that in the snows of Mount Ararat, one can see a black spot. That is the Ark of Noah.
Even Marco Polo wrote about the Ark's presence on Ararat in 1269 AD.
In 1829, Friedrich Perrault reported being shown wood relics from the Ark at the base of Ararat.
If we don't go, we won't know. Somebody has to take up the challenge. We're part of that group of men who have tried to do it in history.
Karl Behrens in 1835.
Claudius Rich in 1836. Hermann von Opitz conquered the Ararat summit in 1845. Englishman H. Danby Seymour reached the peak in 1846.
Colonel Kotsko of the Russian army climbed in 1850.
Englishman Major Robert Stewart made it in 1856.
And hopefully one day it will be done.
I always thought, let's just go out and find the thing. Put this to rest once and for all. And people have been trying to do that for centuries.
Even getting to Mount Ararat, today's explorer deals with obstacles on the road to what locals call Agrida, the painful mountain.
This will be our 3rd try. We're having a little trouble getting up the hill, so we all had to bail out of the vehicle.
I think the Ark of Noah on Greater Ararat in eastern Turkey would be the ultimate archaeological find.
It's a big mountain. I'm 50 years old and I'm thinking, can I really make it up that mountain? You know what I thought? God will go before me. I'll make it up that mountain.
What it means to me to search for Noah's Ark is to come back with some tangible evidence that the Ark existed.
The local Kurdish people protect this mountain. No one climbs without their support.
I believe the Ark and this mountain.
In ancient times, this land was a buffer kingdom between rival empires. Throughout the centuries, it has often known the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel. As modern borders were redrawn, Ararat was seized from its ancestral home in Armenia and given to Turkey. Now it rises majestically across the border, a constant reminder.
This is why we have pain in our heart, because our symbol was taken from us without considering the will of Armenian people. It was in Armenia when Noah constructed the temple, and it was in Armenia where he made his first sacrifice. If you take out Ararat from Armenian mentality, Armenian will cease to be Armenian.
This is not a normal part of the world. This is a hostile part of the world.
It's a demilitarized zone. It's highly classified.
We had the PKK, we have the Turkish army. Needless to say, they don't like one another.
In the decades-long conflict with Turkey, the PKK controls the mountain.
The PKK view themselves as freedom fighters. They represent the people. They once had land, they no longer have lands. They believe they're fighting for a righteous cause.
You walk into a context where there's a war zone. You're on a mountain dominated and controlled by the Kurds. At the same time, you're in a country, and the mountain exists in that country, and is under the sovereignty of the Turkish authorities.
With the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, the Treaty of Sevres guaranteed a homeland for the Kurds, until the treaty was dismissed after the Turkish War of Independence in 1923, and hostilities escalated. In 1945, the Kurds petitioned the newly formed United Nations for a sovereign state and received nothing. So Iraq, Iran, Syria, Armenia, and Turkey all have chunks of what should have been Kurdistan.
That's why they're so militant. They want their own country back. I understand that.
Because they're freedom fighters in their own eyes for what's legally always been and should have been theirs.
In years past, we have been directed by the PKK through our Kurdish partners to exit the mountain.
And you know once you get on that mountain, no one really is going to help you. The military doesn't go where you go.
We had Turkish commandos with us until they decided they didn't want to go any higher.
You're on your own. If someone wants to kidnap you, they want to shoot you, they have every freedom to do it.
But for those searching for Noah's Ark, there is no other destination.
They call me Cowboy. I came over and agreed to set up and make sure everybody got to the top, make sure the equipment works, make sure the food is here, deal with political problems that we have.
Hi there, friend. We're going up to drill. My hope is that, yes, indeed, we find it.
Word. I think we're supposed to look for things like this.
I think there's so much evidence that it's irresponsible not to look.
We are built to explore, find, and reveal. It's just a part of who we are, from Marco Polo to Christopher Columbus.
It's a great team. I look at them more like brothers, you know?
For me, the past 5 years has been really a mirror into my soul. Why am I doing this year after year? Why am I risking life and limb to look for something that we have no conclusive evidence actually exists?
The quest to find the Ark starts with my faith. It started with my faith. It started with a calling that I felt.
We have come together to meet this challenge of scientifically examining, investigating, and revealing to the world the evidence that may exist for Noah's Ark on that mountain.
Last year, it was an amazing trip. Being able to work with my son on top of a mountain. We work and play well together, and we added value to the trip because we were able to Frankenstein stuff together, and that's what you have to do in a place like this.
None of these things are labeled, of course.
We had an active volcano on a fault line within recorded history that's demolished multiple civilizations, and then to think, okay, there's something gonna be suspended in a 60-foot deep glacier that breaks off and falls into a gorge twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. And there's different arguments about how old the Earth is, whether it's 6,000 or 60 million years old. And even if it's the young, smaller model, the fact that no matter what, if it's concrete wood, bathed in who knows what kind of chemical pitch, and if there's a splinter up there, I'd come to the point where, if there's a splinter of wood up there, it'll be by the hand of God, let alone some intact anomaly.
I've had my worst nights of my life on that mountain. I've frozen on a mountain. I've been bloody on that mountain. You sit in your tent and the wind is whipping and hitting the flaps. You're eating a granola bar, which you're going to throw up anyway because you're so nauseated. It's just an unpleasant place to be, and sometimes you question the sanity of just doing it.
You know you're taking your life in your hands when you go on that mountain, and so it has to be a cause bigger and greater than yourself to motivate you to do that.
I expect something amazing on this trip. And I think there's going to be a transfer for what I got, and this is all spiritual in nature, but what I received was word that I was going to receive something, and I was going to be giving something to God. How could I not come?
Finding the Ark would indicate that God actually has intervened with man, and that has a profound impact. People that have thought this through are scared to death. to find it to be true.
Then you realize if you do see these rotten timbers of this boat sticking out of the ancient optics of ice, it could change everything. It could change the whole perception of the Bible. It could change people's thought process about where they came from, who they are.
Do you believe the entire Bible is to be taken literally?
Well, if it's history, as Genesis is, it's written as typical historical narrative, you take it as history. If it's
part of the root of the fascination of the story of Noah's flood is, first of all, it's a really good story. I mean, it's an epic tale. I mean, it has all the elements of a good story. But there's particular branches of Christian theology that have basically embraced the idea of viewing the Bible as a literal, historical, and complete record of the history of the world.
It sounds as though you believe your worldview, which is a literal interpretation of most parts of the Bible, is correct.
The conflict between science and religion that is often portrayed in the media today, I think is actually better portrayed as a conflict within religion over how to view science.
There are some difference between Jews and Christians in the way that they relate to the story of Noah and the way Muslims do.
Everyone, whether they're Muslim or Jewish or Christian, the three accounts that have the Ark in their religious documents, all believe that the Ark exists because their founding documents say it does.
I believe that historical texts are all part of the human knowledge, and the human knowledge is all based on both the religious texts and the things that they saw in nature and the things they were told by their elders.
Hundreds of cultures throughout the world share the same legend of a catastrophic flood that destroyed most of mankind. In 95%, the flood was worldwide. In 88%, a certain family was favored. In 70%, survival was by means of a boat. In 67%, animals were also saved. In 35%, birds were sent out from the boat. And in 9%, exactly 8 people were spared.
But rather than immediately dismissing a literal worldwide flood, just suppose that maybe, actually, that this is speaking of real events.
If the biblical stories in Genesis are literally true and historically accurate, you basically have to throw away geology and all the physics and chemistry and math and biology that it's built upon to embrace that view.
Being a flood over the entire earth, and those who take that literally are kind of bound to understanding it in that way, even if it contradicts science. Whereas Muslims, we're kind of bound to accept science, whatever that says, and then reconcile that with the text.
We know for certain, geologically, that before 5,000 years ago, there were enormous amounts of rainfall where a great deal of water would have accumulated and a major flood would have occurred. There is no question about it, because we see the evidence of this in the rock itself.
So when you come at it from a Christian point of view, I don't think you should be closed to the possibility that Genesis actually is just simply describing what happened.
In which case, validating your faith relies on the reality of that story as a global flood and that it ended up on Ararat.
This is my father's place. My father was put his tent down here. This is my grandfather's place also. I remember my mother was said to me, "Come, I have to wash your body." I was run away, and then she was come behind me, take my arm, and then hit me. "Come here, you very dirty. I have to clean you." It was like this. Yeah, it was like this.
Every season, Kurdish shepherds lead their flocks above the desert heat to graze in pastures fed by the melting ice cap. The warmer the summer, the greater the exposure, leading to the most intriguing of local legends.
Throughout the 1800s, they came. In 1856, local boy Haji Yerum and his father were hired by 3 unbelieving scientists to take them up to the Ark. When the scientists saw the vessel, they flew into a rage and attempted to destroy it.
They took a blood oath that if any one of the three ever revealed the truth, the other two would kill them.
Some 50 years later, one of the scientists gave a deathbed confession which corroborated Haji Yeram's story.
In July 1955, Fernand Navarra, traveling with his son Raphael, climbed Mount Ararat. Raphael saw the Ark first in a crevasse. After lowering himself into the crevasse and using a pickaxe to chop through the ice, "I found wood," he called. Yes, Navarra had found wood, but was it a piece of the Ark?
Testing proved it wasn't old enough. The wood was from the 8th century, 4,000 years after Noah's time.
But what was the wood doing on the slopes of Ararat?
What I have listed here are 4 reports of the Ark with the door off, 7 reports of one end broken off, 18 reports of it sticking out of the ice.
In 1883, reports issued by a Turkish commission investigating avalanches on Mount Ararat detailed that they had seen Noah's Ark protruding from a glacier.
Prince Nuri declared that he had found the Ark high on Ararat, that he walked within its walls, and that its measurements were exactly as described in the Bible.
There are 9 reports of a meltwater pond, 8 reports sitting on a ledge, 10 reports of a ravine, valley, and gully.
In 1902, as a boy, Armenian George Hagopian was taken to the Ark by his uncle.
You saw it how many times?
Twice.
Twice?
In 1916, Russian aviator Vladimir Roskovitsky described how he saw the Ark while on a flight over Mount Ararat. The Tsar sent soldiers up the mountain to confirm the sighting. They brought back photographs displaying hundreds of rooms with cages. But the Bolshevik Revolution occurred shortly thereafter, and the photographs were destroyed.
You could see a large vessel there, laying on its side.
These guys didn't even know what they had seen. They just described it to us. They realized it was a huge boat.
He said he saw this object, this murky object in the snow, and he said it looked like timbers from Noah's Ark.
And then off the left back here is the part that broke off. And it is laying slightly down. You can see in the back of it.
Of all the people who have said they've seen Noah's Ark, Ed Davis has the most reliable eyewitness account.
He had been there as part of the Army Corps of Engineers, building roads, and he rescued the grandson of one of the Kurdish chieftains.
The only way that they could say thank you was to share with them their most precious possession, which was the remains of Noah's Ark.
He got within about 100 yards of it. The storm kept him from getting closer, but he viewed it with the Army field glasses.
Comes back after the war, tells a few people about it. I find out about it. I go give him a lie detector test. We give him 3 lie detector tests. He passes all 3 of them.
And he passed every one with flying colors.
I mean, you just can't dismiss this.
Okay, 3 reports of a stream and a pond. The point is, we have so many reports, and many of them say the same thing.
They describe it in the same fashion, as a long rectangular shape with a catwalk on the top, found on a very rugged area of the mountain.
And there's no chance of collaboration here. It comes from different sources over different years.
Everyone tells the same basic story.
The structure is there.
We got the word from a military guy that says, we know where it is. You go just a little bit to the north of 7 meters and you'll hit it.
Okay, but our window is closing. We've got, just over 30 days. Our window is going to be closing very quickly.
You've got till end of the first week of September before it starts getting nasty.
Cowboy's in agreement with me, but I want to get your permission to go and to climb.
Just as soon as you get those drills, as soon as they arrive, absolutely, you got it. It's going to be a good year, and we're going to find something.
All right.
Good night.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
All right. Good night. We're going.
Yep. The moment we got the news that we were going to be leaving the next day, I did scramble to find a computer so I could Facebook my wife.
I thought you were calling it too, and we were at the bank, and the car overheated, and everything else.
That's what Andrew told me.
Well, how are you?
I'm terrific. I'm going to climb a mountain tomorrow, so you guys can be praying for me.
There's very little privacy at Moret camping unless you had your own room. You're sleeping in a room that has 3 or 4 other guys in there, and they're getting ready to climb a mountain. So they're throwing everything in a bag, and I'm getting ready to throw all my stuff in. And I was in my little bubble talking to I call her my girlfriend. I was focused because I knew it was my only chance to talk to her for a while.
Well, I thought I was climbing later, but it's kind of like military around here. You just, you know, they tell you they're shipping out, you're shipping out. So I'm shipping out in the morning. Just wanted to see y'all's faces before we leave.
You don't know if this may be the end. You know, it's a great expedition, but something may happen.
I don't know when I'm going to talk to you on that.
Can I pray for you first?
Yes, please.
Father, I pray right now for my sweet husband that you will protect him.
I did take this very seriously, knowing it was a treacherous climb and anything could happen.
Bless him, Lord, and may this be a blessed time, and may they find the ark and take him home safely. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We prayed and signed off, and next morning we were out the door on our way up.
We began our journey tracking up to the first base camp, and then overnight we're on our way.
At 17,000 feet, Mount Ararat's dangerous terrain is a challenge for even the most experienced adventurer. Living atop a glacier at altitude, you're combating fatigue and hypoxia, working in whiteouts and 100-mile-per-hour winds. But advancing technologies allow explorers a better glimpse into the ancient ice that legend says entombs the Ark.
Long live the young at heart. You know who you are. With your spirit.
I didn't expect that long of a walk just to get up to the first camp.
Precisely 6 hours on the first day, and we have made it to base camp 1.
Breath by breath, walking hand in hand, step by step.
Time to overnight.
Yes, that's true.
6-hour trek up to first base camp. It was long, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm tired, but I'm glad that I did it.
Been a forensic architect for 27 years, and in my forensic architecture, I go around and look at buildings, what's wrong with them. It's the equivalent of being a doctor, but to buildings. My background in architecture has been, a lot of it's been in waterproofing materials. I told them I was interested in doing my dissertation on the waterproofing of Noah's Ark. As it says in the Bible, it was covered inside and out with pitch.
When I was even 17 years old, I remember seeing a documentary on the search for Noah's Ark.
This may be the most incredible film you will ever see.
Even as a young boy, I thought, I want to do this someday. And then 20 years later, I'm sitting at home watching another documentary. It's the same documentary comes on TV again. And I'm watching that and thinking, they've still not found Noah's Ark. And really, that's when I took my skills as really a wilderness explorer, being in the woods, and took them to the mountaineering, kind of started to train in mountaineering because I wanted to bring a tool to the team.
Get rested up, get rehydrated, and get some food. And we'll spend 2 days here and on up to camp 2.
Rudy's gonna sleep real well tonight.
There are a number of different kinds of volcanoes on Earth. Some of them are actually underwater. Most volcanism goes on the seabed, and we see very little of it. Tectonic plates that meet in the middle of oceans have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volcanoes. On land, we can classify volcanoes into ones that have built up over a long period of time with successive eruptions. They might have layers of ash and lava flows, so the whole thing gets built up like a layer cake. We often call those stratovolcanoes or composite volcanoes. And that would be the kind of volcano that Ararat, Mount Ararat in Turkey is. If you pile up a big mountain, then there are all kinds of erosive processes that bring it down again. And particularly in the case of Ararat, it's glaciated and will have been even more heavily glaciated back in the ice ages. And that, the action of those glaciers is to remove the material, all the rocks and boulders, and carry them down slope. And that's reflecting the erosive processes that have occurred.
So this is base camp. We're about 10,000 feet. Camp 2 is what? Well, 1,000 meters.
1,000 meters up.
1,000 meters up. Yesterday was our easiest day. Took us about 6 hours, and yeah, we just heard some gunfire just right up above us there. So somewhere interesting.
You get the feeling this is not a place you want to get hurt. This is not a place you want to do something stupid, because it's a long way to help. It's not a great environment for anything to go wrong.
So Jim's hurt, he's busted up, can't move.
It nearly killed him, nearly took his life.
Jim Edwin was a dedicated astronaut, a very fine man, a highly reasoned individual. He worked very hard on the Apollo 15 mission.
Dave, an extraordinary television picture here.
Okay, Houston, as I stand out here in the wonders of the unknown at Hadley, I sort of realize there's a fundamental truth to our nature. Man must explore. And this is exploration at its greatest.
It was just a very significant time in my life to be on another world, a world where there's no life, there was no sound, there was no sky, just looking up into the blackness of space, but looking up and marveling at the beauty of the earth. And there it was, you know, in the blackness of space, but so small that I could hold it between my fingers like a little marble. In a spiritual sense, I felt magnified because I was holding God's special creation between my fingers and really seeing it with his eyes.
His mission on Earth, after being an astronaut on Apollo Mission 15, is to find Noah's Ark.
He said, you know, I'm planning a trip to Mount Ararat to look for Noah's Ark. Do you think he'd want to go?
Here was a man who stood on the moon, and he said that wasn't the greatest achievement of his life. Standing on Mount Ararat was.
And he was disappointed, of course, when he'd come down, but keep going back year after year.
He just wanted to find out the truth.
So today we're going to move camp and go on up to 4,200 and spend a couple of nights there to acclimate, and then on the way up to the summit.
I found an anomaly, organic, on Mount Ararat.
It says there's 2 rectilinear forms up on that mountain under the ice. I've seen them from this special satellite imaging that we got that can penetrate ice.
It's a man-made object, organic. It's not a rock structure or anything like that. How it got there, I don't know. And that's not for me to find out. It's for whoever goes up there and does it. But it's definitely a man-made object.
Mr. X was a man who worked for NASA and had access to a radar that could penetrate the ground and go into the ice.
Well, my relationship with the man we call Mr. X goes back about 6 years to the beginning of our current project.
I said, well, actually it's up there on the Eastern Plateau.
It was in fact the leads he gave us that led us to the site we're at.
It's in two pieces, now three, because the glacier's moving all the time.
And when the glaciers move, they start grinding things up.
And I feel whatever this object is here in the next 4 to 5 years, probably that will be end of the exploration, because it'll be pretty well crushed.
He's also helped me with a project in Israel, not just on Mount Ararat. So I've had a secondary type of means of testing his accuracy, where we actually have dug and been able to determine things.
There is photographs that were taken by a branch of the government years ago.
During the late 50s and early 60s, the American spy plane, the U-2, was making its global reconnaissance missions for military intelligence. Many of the flights passed over Ararat on their way to Russia, and a number of pilots reported seeing what looked like a ship locked in the ice below.
Irwin and I stood at the front gate of Incirlik Air Force Base, and the commanding general came out to the gate and knew Irwin. They knew each other from times past. And Jim said, yeah, we're here. We're looking for Noah's Ark. And the guy said, well, I've seen the Ark. And I said, what? And Jim's face was incredulous as well. I said, yeah, I've got pictures of it. And we said, well, let's see them. He said, oh, no, it's all classified.
For decades, the pictures remained classified, but then in 1995, the CIA finally released the photos.
The photographs that were taken way back when were U-2 and SR-71. Which one I looked at probably was a U-2. I couldn't find nothing that didn't look like a rock.
This report came from here in 1917. They came over from Russia and they went up and took it apart. I mean, there was so much intrigue and shadows.
In 1980, I served on board the U.S. nuclear submarine, USS Casimir Pulaski. As sonar supervisor, I carried a top secret clearance and was in charge of classified material.
Somebody would say, I have pictures. Here's the documentation.
Yeah, in the year 1968, a friend and I were employed at the Smithsonian in the vertebrate paleontology section, and they had some photographs which I went over and looked at, arranged on a table that had been taken from a balloon, they told me, showing a ship-like object down in some ice.
Mount Ararat had been experiencing the warmest weather on record. As a result, the ice on the top of the mountain began to melt. Lo and behold, there sat a large ship.
Well, they pretty well came out and told everybody keep their mouth shut. Keep their mouth shut.
The U.S. military science and intelligence community were in complete agreement that this was in fact Noah's Ark.
Many, many people believe the Ark has already been found. It's a done deal.
In 1959, a mysterious boat-shaped object was photographed by a Turkish reconnaissance pilot. A team of Turkish explorers and scientists examined the object and discovered that its dimensions were indeed near those of the Ark, as stated in the Bible. The September 5, 1960 issue of Life magazine carried the story. Then, in 1977, Ron Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist, inspected the site with a metal detector.
What we actually have found is physical evidence that this is a boat. My personal feeling is that it is Noah's Ark.
Is that Noah's Ark? No. What is it? It's a push-up in the earth of rhyolite. And that was established by a geologist.
And there have been people that have been up and down Mount Ararat and come back and told lies. There have been movies filmed that have been outright deception.
Back in March, Noah's Ark Ministries International, or NAMI, claimed to have found and entered Noah's Ark.
And they had film footage, and they were inside the mountain in a cave, and they were knocking on these wooden panels. So Donald was really intrigued with this. Is this real? Is this genuine? I must find out. So that is the reason he went.
Donald Mackenzie was described as a Scottish Indiana Jones who had been to Turkey's Mount Ararat many times in search of proof of Noah's Ark. But in 2010, he failed to return from a trip up the mountain.
Went, with the intention of getting answers to his questions, and then he simply disappeared.
Inside of a cave, they found the remains of the ark. So what's it doing in a cave? You know, nobody didn't drive the ark into a cave.
They built that stuff. They talked to people that said, yeah, they had us up there, carpenter, doing this, and they said this was going to be a Noah's Ark, for a film, a movie set.
Oh, yes. Everybody knew, yes. They were paid money to carry the wood up to the mountain and construct the false ark inside the mountain. Yes. Oh, yes.
I think it probably got to a certain point where they had so much invested in it that they couldn't admit that this could be hoax.
If it's God's will that I don't receive the answers to my questions, then I accept that. I must accept that. But we don't know what God's will is for the future. So we just continue seeking.
Here comes our gear on the horses up to Camp 2 at 4,200 meters. So I'm getting out of the way. Here goes the last horse over the hill. And they are much more faster than we are. But the Kurds can keep up with them at the horse's pace. Plus they smoke. I don't know how they do it. No wonder they call this Agrida, the painful mountain. And I can tell you that it is.
At 4,200 camp, it was almost like the environment really changed. We went from rocky slopes and what have you to really rocky and not even hardly a level place to put a tent. Like being on the surface of a Star Trek moon out there. You really feel like you're on a different planet. I did have some fears the first night. When we first got up there, what happened? A guy had already fallen and broken his shoulder and his leg.
The Kurds around here tend to yell a lot, but this was a gut-wrenching scream. Several of them.
We got a guy who fell down the ravine on the snow. Looks like he's got a compound break in his leg. We're back at camp trying to find stuff to make a stretcher. He's a big fella. We're gonna bring you along for the ride. You gotta get to the rock. It's most steady. He's got it. He's a doctor. Thanks.
The helicopter? It's coming. Yeah. Okay. Just stay warm. Are you warm? Okay. He was very uncomfortable with his shoulder. It's dislocated. I tried to set it. The shoulders are very difficult to set. I tried once. I told him no more because it'll just knock you out with pain.
So what we're waiting for is a military helicopter to come. At the moment, the visibility is good, but in these conditions, you never know when the helicopter arrives. It may cloud over and we'll have to wait.
A helicopter here is not normally supposed to happen because any one of a number of fighting factions could shoot it down.
The weather just started clouding up and there was zero viz. So after about an hour of loiter time, they decided that they'd have to move the casualty down. They were going towards 3,200. But there's another place between here and 3,200, only about a quarter of the way down, and the helicopter was able to land there.
So a big fella, he had not very good equipment. He was alone. He
did not have crampons on.
Physically not in the best of conditions to be doing something like this. He must have lost his footing, and it cost him. On the top of that mountain, life slows down a lot. You have time to think. But when you have that time to really reflect and to chew on stuff, and you run out of the simple little decisions that you have to make in a busy life, and all you're left with is the big stuff. You have the chance to kind of explore that, if not with others, at least personally.
Snowed last night. It either blew off or started melting already. It's very beautiful up here. It was kind of windy last night, but the wind has died down yet again. Feeling good. I think we're starting to physically get ready for our next part of the climb, which is going up to the top.
What is hopeful is that there's enough ice up there to entomb a vessel of quite some size. I mean, I think that most people would agree that we could be dealing with 100 feet of ice or more in some areas. So it could be saved for all of perpetuity, similar to how a woolly mammoth would be saved after digging out of the Siberian wilderness. So that's the theory, at least.
For remnant wood to be preserved for long amounts of time, generally you need an oxygen-free environment. You know, you need that piece of wood to be locked or entombed in sediments, like in a bog or underneath a lot of marine sediments that is oxygen-free, right? Because when you have oxygen in an environment, you have fungi and you have bacteria that once that organism dies, right, that tree dies, bacteria and fungi are going to attack and start eating and decomposing that piece of wood.
What we don't know is how long was the Ark exposed to the elements prior to being entombed in ice.
If organic material or wood or other features was locked in the ice and remained cold and dry, it would have the potential to last very long.
Well, there's no reason to think that wood of any kind of density or size wouldn't be able to survive locked in ice for 4,360 years. I mean, we have the frozen mammoths in Siberia, and if you believe evolutionary timescales, they've been there for 25,000 years.
I think the only slam dunk that we have is we just got to drill something up, and it's got to be wood. 1 o'clock breakfast, 2:30 departure? Yeah, 2:30 or so departure. It seems to usually work. Now, my biggest concern is I'm not too worried about what's happening up top, but if we see a lot of clouds coming up from below, that may cause us to delay. But if it's clear below, it's a little cloudy up top, I'm not as worried about that because it usually blows over. But if it's coming from below, then that could be a less than ideal day to summit. It's trending about 10-15 degrees colder than I've ever seen it. That little plaque up there, that shiny thing, that's actually a commemorative. There was a Iranian climber that disappeared a couple years ago. They never found him. But
right before you make your ascent up the mountain, they have that plaque up there of all the people who died. And that was just like terrifying for me. I was like, is my name going to be on that plaque? What am I doing here? So, those kind of emotions run through you. And then the fact that you think you might just die from the curd food always crosses your mind. Basically, whatever they put in front of me, I hated, and who knows what it was.
It's going to be an adventure, I think, for me at least. I've been eating, drinking well, and I think going up, is going to be a whole lot different at that altitude. I'm not used to it. We got up about 1 a.m. We packed up, had a light breakfast that the Kurds prepared for us. And about 3 a.m., we started to make for the summit. It's dark, it's cold, you got your headlamps on. You want to be back in your sleeping bag. You're going to have to climb this trail in the dark. You can't see. These steps are steep, and the journey from 14,000 feet to nearly 17,000 feet, this is the steepest part of the climb. somewhere between 15,000 and 16,000 feet altitude hit me, and I was really fatigued. I was tired, I was slowing down, I was getting nauseous, and actually stopped to throw up. My hands are completely numb.
Cold or just tired? Or
I
both?
think the lack of oxygen.
Yeah.
See the mountain shadow now.
Oh, yeah. That's gorgeous.
It was about 6 in the morning, and the sun just started coming up, and I turned around, and I saw the shadow of Ararat below me. It really inspired me to say, Aaron, you can do this. Keep going. You just got a little bit further to go. We're up here at the glacier, putting on our crampons. It was a pretty miserable climb. Got another hour on the ice here. I'm freezing.
God knows you question your courage. And some days I can't walk for stumbling. If we could only see what we're becoming.
How much further do we have? Boys, almost at the top of the first false summit.
I really thought about turning around and going down. I just thought, I don't know that I can do this.
Off to the left are some pretty serious crevasses. We were warned by the parents to stay right. Apparently it's pretty dangerous.
Once you see it and you breathe it, it's unforgettable. When you know it, once you know it and you hold it, it's unforgettable.
Well, this is it.
God knows you question your courage. And some days I can't walk for stumbling. If we could only see what we're becoming. So keep on, keep it on, keep it on. And sing along, sing along, sing along.
That's my turn.
To the dreamers, wide believers, hanging on to hope by a thread. To the soulful, heart open, hopeful, keep on charging.
This is it. It's once in a lifetime.
When you feel it, once you see it, and you breathe it, it's unforgettable. When you know it, once you know it, and you hold it, it's unforgettable. When you feel it, once you see it, and you breathe it, it's unforgettable.
Red Summit! I never thought I'd make it. I have to give credit to Bill and Will for pushing me. I think the last part of it was mental, and I just wasn't really mentally prepared to push myself to the summit, but I made it, and I'm really glad I did.
Once you summit and you realize you've actually accomplished something that is very hard to do, it stirs the soul, and I was stirred.
This is a place that very few people have ever been. This is a place where civilization started again. And it was, you know, just chills were all over me.
I couldn't say a word. I was like, I'm really here. This is awesome.
The arc has a very, very strong pull to it. I think if one is not careful, it can become an obsession.
Part of you wants to fold the dream up, just put it away and think, why am I wasting my time? But there's still a part of you that's always looking for this sliver of hope.
Well, we look for more information, and we take the leads that we're given, and we work with them.
I'm not religious in that sense that I'm going to have my emotions put me somewhere there. I do it strictly technical and scientific. And if I say there's something there, it's there, period.
Based upon the GPS coordinates given to us by Mr. X in 2009, and then in 2010, what we did was we set up a grid and started surveying with the ground-penetrating radar. Knowing this is an ice area and a rock glacier, we concluded GPR was the go-to investigation tool. What ground-penetrating radar does, it sends continuous bursts of short wavelength electromagnetic energy into the ground. It basically penetrates the ice, and when it bounces off of something that's either harder or of a different material, it will reflect. This is the bedrock down here. This is the ice up in here, and as you see this green circles around a very unique-looking straight line that's at an angle approximately 30 degrees to the horizontal. These two anomalies were symmetric. In other words, almost like they would be this shape in the ice. So the results of 2010 were promising. In 2011, we did all the red lines. This data we collected in order to get more of a three-dimensional diagram of what was there. The bedrock is going to be blue. This is all filled with ice above it, where the gray is, and then the pink things are basically the anomalies that are in the ice itself. If you take three-dimensional data, you can get a little bit better idea of how that would look in reality.
I felt like we had a fairly strong expedition in 2011. I mean, we had good support from the Curtiss team. We had the ground-penetrating radar, and we were prepared to dig and made an attempt at one of the dig locations that we were told this is where you need to go. We spent another 10 days trying to dig down to this location, but we were inexperienced in how to make that happen, so we didn't have the right kind of hoists and so forth to help us in the process, and so we failed during our permit time to get down deep to where we thought we needed to be.
We would go back and talk to Mr. X and say, okay, so where were we? Were we close? Were we not? In this 2011 work, you said you're right next to it.
2012, we came back more prepared than ever. We had a great plan, assembled, I think, a rock star team.
2012, we found more anomalies. In this case, because we did three-dimensional techniques, it was easier to take kind of a slices both horizontally and vertically so we could see more information. And I was looking initially at these kind of red zones as being the areas to go concentrate on, and we see this sort of a red and yellow square area, and we're thinking that is interesting because it keeps showing up at the 30 to 40 foot range, and we say, okay, we have satellite imagery saying it's there, we have an anomaly there, we have all this information, and so we're thinking that's probably the best place to excavate.
Anomaly here, here, and here at the depths that the satellite said. We've got 2 for 2 confirmation so far. Let's go ahead and drill for the first one, the closest one to the surface. So we get the drill out and we start going down, and right at the 32-foot mark, we on one side of the drill, we felt it and we hit something hard.
And then John Bryant came down and said, okay, Holt, we think we're at it. All you gotta do is take a dig team up there and put the tent over the drill bit, and you guys work your way down to it. You'll find it 34 meters down.
We've got a team of Kurds cutting, we got a team of Americans cutting, and we're switching because communication is important with chainsaws in a small space.
So for 10 days, we chopped away at this, taking this thing apart one core drill bit at a time, which is they're each a meter long.
So the hole is growing because we're going 1 meter a day, which is the length of each auger bit. So we're taking off a meter as like our victory trophy. We have achieved our goal.
Randall Price was with us, and we were doing core samples out of the side of this 8-foot by 8-foot hole.
With every meter, we got more and more excited.
Hopes were just really high. We knew all we have to do is get down to this object.
We knew we were on the brink of what could be the greatest archaeological discovery so far, or of all time for that matter.
So we decided, since the sun was going down, let's wait till tomorrow. It'll be better for the cameras, and let's just make this big reveal tomorrow. And I remember going to bed that night and just laying in the tent and just thinking how this is going to change my life and change really so many things.
And the night before, really thinking this is going to be great.
The next morning we got up, we all went over to the mill tent, just pumped up, patting each other on the back, just talking about this great moment that we were going to be a part of. So I got down in the hole and cut away the last meter, and just as we were working that last block out,
the last auger with the bit on the end fell over.
Just fell over on the ice.
But it's supposed to be stuck into something, right? I was on the drill, I remember feeling it, and like we all looked at each other like nothing happened, like, oh, what now?
I remember picking it up and looking inside it, and it was just chock full of ice. and, you know, just disappointment just all over me. And I wanted just to set it back down in the hole, you know, again. I didn't want to be, you know, a part of this bad moment where, of course, everybody's wondering what is going on. And so we didn't really say much. We just set it over to the side, and we thought, well, maybe it's just we were off. Obviously, that's not stuck in the object, but ground-penetrating radar seems to think it's this far deep, so maybe we're just off a couple of feet, so we dug another couple layers out.
We dug down past it, and there was nothing there.
Then we had them drop the drill bits down into the hole, and we just began to punch holes, you know, all around the bottom, just thinking maybe we'll pull up something.
I remember drilling 5 meters and 3 meters, 5, a number of meters in every possible direction.
Nothing, 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 nothing.
Everybody's heart just plummeted. We went from the night before giving testimonies on how we really felt the Lord directing us all here and how everything had gone so well. And this was the biggest expedition to date, and we had all the right people and all the right equipment. It had gone so well.
From being what I thought just hours before was going to be just the big highlight of my life to this huge disappointment. In this case, 3 years prior of freezing cold temperatures, unbelievable weather, devastation, people being hurt, and you're so ready, and then just it wasn't there.
We got full-grown men crying. They've staked a lot, emotionally, in their fields of study.
I climbed out of the hole, I grabbed my back and I packed, and I just walked down the mountain that day.
And had it been there, we would have found it, but it wasn't. And that led to an emotional, and down they went. And after we cleaned things up, down we went.
We're not done. We're just taking a little break.
I'm excited. This new special ground-penetrating radar that is supposed to be specific for ice.
We're going to put all the lessons we've learned from these 5 years, be more prepared, better technology. We had basically secret GPS coordinates.
It's downloading the GPS data. That's a good sign.
We're going to finally hit what we had missed in previous years.
This excites me. We've built special drills this year and special cores to be able to pull this stuff out. I know how to drill. My people know how to drill. I want to find organic matter.
Every year that I go up to the Eastern Plateau, I walk down Jacmel Peak and look down the Horror Gorge and think, this is where you need to go. You'll never feel like you finished the Ark search if you don't get down into the Horror Gorge. We've never had the kind of permissions that we've had to get this close.
This year, we will either prove that yes, it is here, or no, it is not.
Good morning from high camp. It's about 5:45 in the morning. Our first full day here. We slept pretty well last night. We were able to put in a well and get the chainsaw, generator, and several other things started yesterday. This morning we're going to try and set up the big gear tent. The wind is not at all, which is quite unusual, so we want to take advantage of that just to get somewhere to have the equipment and a kitchen and get out of the wind when it starts back up again. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful morning. See you out there. Right here? I think that sounds good.
We've organized most of the expedition's equipment, and this afternoon, after lunch, which we're about to head up to, we hope to start drilling. Here we go.
Well, we won't be doing that for about an hour. Let's see, it's now 12:10. So.
This will be the real practical part of your dissertation.
Yep. Let's see, it's now 12:10, probably about 1 o'clock, so I'll give you time to get ready.
A lot of people were on the mountain for different reasons. My reason to be on the mountain was I wanted my portion of it to be as scientifically accurate as possible so that when the scientific community looked at our expedition, they could say this was done according to good science and not junk science. Drill and hit wood. That's what we're going to do today. Speak it into existence. That's what I always say.
Okay.
If the Ark is truly intact, it'll be approximately 45 foot high.
The Ark is to be 30 cubits high, 300 cubits long, and 50 cubits wide.
What is a cubit? A cubit historically has been recognized generally as the length from the elbow to the end of the index finger of the reigning monarch. We've averaged the historical values and have come up with 20.5 inches for a cubit, which means the original Ark was 500 feet long, 86 feet wide, 52 feet high. God said to Noah, rooms are to be placed in the ark. There would be 3 levels. Bulkheads were a vital part of the structure, these room dividers, which encompass the dimension and the hull and some of the floor levels, and that gives a superior structure.
And build under our eyes and according to our inspiration the ark that shall save thee and those who follow thee. And do not appeal to me on behalf of those who are bent on evil doing, for behold, they are destined to be drowned.
The guys are going to start drilling Bill, Will, and Bruce. And Jose and I are going to start completing this grid and make sure this is all in alignment. We're just going to hit all through this area and see what we can come up with today. But we got a good work day today. We're going to take advantage of it.
Howdy, friends from USA. We've come to drill with Bill and Will. Woohoo!
Lock it. Lock it. You have the tool out. Okay.
The first thing you're going to hit on Noah's Ark is not going to be wood. It's going to be bituminous materials. Bituminous meaning something black and gooey, an oil-based product. The Bible's clear, inside and out. Noah's Ark was covered in pitch. So it's probably going to be something that's ingrained in the wood. And so if you hit it, it should show you something. What I decided to do is everything that came out of the hole, I was going to put it in a pan, heat it up, and see if any of it melted.
All bituminous materials are temperature susceptible, meaning at a very low range, they'll melt or they'll become gooey. The aluminum foil is melting. Looks like all rocks. We did a quick field test just to verify to make sure we weren't looking at something different than just bedrock. So it's just gravel. Yeah.
This was verification that where we were last year is in fact not where we want to be.
And now we're moving on to the next spot. And we'll keep doing that until time runs out, and Lord willing, we'll find it before our time runs out.
Today is August 14th, and hopefully it's a day to be remembered in history as a great day to commemorate what was done thousands and thousands of years ago, that God flooded the earth and preserved 8 people so that the earth could be repopulated. I hope and pray that today is today.
Because now time is of the essence. We have to get this right. We can't just be pop marking around on this ice. We need to know precisely where to go, and we're going to see if we can hit wood.
This is the RB1 hole. Good news, we didn't get stuck. So, another hole accomplished. So far, negative results, we'll see. Collecting samples, labeling it, and we'll move on to the next hole.
We drill, and just, it breaks my heart to see these guys just, let, we get our hopes up and we drill and then it's a miss every time. So, because, I feel like I'm letting them down. I tell them, drill here, we see something. And when we don't hit it, they're going down 17 meters and 19.5 meters, and they're not hitting anything, so. We keep seeing anomalies, but for some reason, every time we drill, we don't hit anything. With all the ice, we get a lot of false readings. It's like I'm making them do all that extra work, and I do feel like all that weight is on my shoulders. I know deep down in my heart, the Ark is laying up here somewhere.
One thing I've learned, the weather can change very quickly here, from sunny to freezing rain, socked in by fog and clouds.
Our energy is pretty low. We've been up here a long time. We were able to get 3 more holes in today. They were between 13 and 14 meters.
Unfortunately, we didn't come up with anything exciting. That's a big disappointment, but I understand. Just proceed with the drilling and extending it per Dr. Bryant. And that's about all that can be done right now. Will do. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Today we've drilled 3 bores, and in those 3 we went all the way to bedrock. The drilling went great, but unfortunately we didn't have positive results, what we're looking for.
The air is much thinner. Breathing is hard. That takes its toll.
I'm having a hard time breathing. Working conditions yesterday was miserable for me. I'm still not acclimated up here.
We were able to get the 3 holes in today, and then a storm came in. We've just got pounded with about 6 inches of 1/4 to 1/2 inch hail, snow with lightning.
Well, we put a lot of effort into working earlier in the day, so we got our 3 holes drilled, which was our goal.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Probably some cards tonight.
Probably so.
I'm really excited that Dr. Bryant's here.
We already got here before we did. Come on, brother. How you doing?
Good to see you, Adam.
Adam.
How you doing, man?
Come here to eat breakfast.
Okay, all right. Hey, Brent. Good to see you.
Welcome to the hill.
Oh, thanks.
Can I get this back for you?
How you doing? I couldn't wait to get here.
The golden boy.
Having other people around, boost the morale. I like that.
It gets worse.
Good stuff. I asked you, mate. I don't know.
Golly, the perspective of where you are here is unbelievable. Yeah.
I could show you the 3D data. Here it is.
Okay.
A lot of noisy data, but it seems to.
It's a very interesting shape.
So what's the possibility that that could be wood?
Well, based upon the knowledge that we have of what was here, an ancient ship, and knowing that trees don't grow at 17,000 feet, nor even above 11,000, the tree line's usually 11,000 feet, would dictate to me and say that was a boat. But it doesn't say boat on the GPS. It says reflection of a pattern of interesting material. That's why we're going to go drill it.
And I see those layers.
Yeah. Ice lays down flat. And as it lays down flat, it will take the contour of the ground. But anything that's oblique or at an angle to it, from my experience, can't be ice. So Bruce was examining this piece that came out of the boring, RB7, and what he has found and what he was using his fire sample test, the ASTM test. And go ahead and tell him what you found, Bruce.
Well, I was heating everything up, and I noticed this thing was starting to melt, which indicates a bituminous material or an asphalt or petroleum-based material. So with discretion, I said, whoa, wait a minute. This could be something that we could get to a real lab and get some real data on.
What I see as well is there's some fibrous edges along the side, which means that to me that it's not a mineral material.
Like you're looking at a piece of asphalt felt paper.
We found it, well, they did hit some at about 50 feet.
Send it to a laboratory. They'll be able to break it down, tell us what kind of material it is.
Okay, well, thank you.
It'll be quite rare for an organic material to be this high up on this mountain.
More light.
It almost looks like a crystal.
When we were looking in a microscope and here's this vitreous refractive material that's not a rock, it looks like a piece of amber almost. It's not wood fiber, but it would fit resin perfectly. It's translucent, almost crystalline, exactly what I thought pitch was. If I had imagined something exciting, it'd be hard to do it better. It's very encouraging. We need more, and I'm ready. I want the big piece.
It's very encouraging. I'm excited about it, but it's not enough. We have to have more of this. We need to find more samples. We just have to keep pushing forward and hope for the best.
It's all over the mountain. I don't believe you're going to find a gigantic arc. You're going to find chunks of it. Some will be in the Aba Glacier. Some may be in the Aurora Gorge.
I've always been curious about the Ahora Gorge and the stories of there's an object in the Ahora Gorge.
Portions of the Ahora Gorge itself are not accessible.
The Ahora Gorge is just riddled with crevasses, which are areas of the glacier that have collapsed away.
The void, basically, where the ice is sliding off the mountain.
For a crevasse to form, you do have to have movement. You are exceeding the strength of the ice, and that could be exceeding that either in shear or in tension or in compression. When we see crevasses, it is evidence that some motion has occurred, and it's occurred in a way that imposed stresses that exceeded the strength.
Always moving, with some hundreds of feet deep. Entering the crevasses offers some of the team a unique but dangerous perspective to the bedrock below. With time running out, others prepare for an equally perilous descent into the Ahora Gorge.
It's a very dangerous place, Ahora Gorge.
Here we are at the western plateau. We're about to go exploring and try to get the gorge as far as we can. We plan to go down as best we can, route find, and then up and out of the way of any rock fall or any danger and still keep some stable snow. Here we go. Climbing! Getting some crevasses here. I think if we go left, we'll be better.
We're not going down any further, are we?
We went down with Hobie did yesterday on the anomaly. They hit something hard, but it wasn't gravel. Then the bit got stuck.
We're hitting something. We're hitting resistance. What we don't know is what it is we're hitting. The scans and the satellite says there's something there, and the people from that are saying there's something there. And we say, well, we're drilling, we're hitting something hard.
Is there wood? Is it rock? What is it that we're hitting when we drill? Because we're hitting something, but we don't know what it is.
Until we get to core, we don't know. But we're not giving up yet. We'll be able to identify with the diamond cores that we've got coming from China.
What we're trying to do is, based on the information, drill core so that we can retrieve a far more substantial sample with the drill coring tool that we have. What we have here is the drill. This is it. It's a coring grit and diamond tipped. Goes on the auger. Hopefully we can get some samples. There's a lip on each side, and as it goes down, the material is pulled inside here till it stops. And they pull it out, and then they take this off, and they pop it through the hollow part, and they get a nice, kind of like this, they get a nice core of whatever we're trying to core. Let's go. Let's go find an arc.
We need him up there.
As the days get shorter, the climbing window on Ararat begins to close. The permit from the Turkish government is for a clearly defined time, to protect lives from the unexpected that comes with the change of seasons.
Finishing up our time up here.
Storm season maybe a little earlier this year.
Yeah, we're supposed to have another 3 days before this starts up, but we'll see about that. Hopefully the guys who are trying to head up to help us are doing okay at 4,200.
It's Wednesday the 28th. We're getting ready to start up a new day of drilling. First thing off is we're going to get the generator going, get our stuff charging. We had quite a snow yesterday evening, but we've got good weather, and hopefully it should go well.
We've been sent up a reinforcement with a fancy drill bit. It's out of China or somewhere. We're hoping to get down. We've redug RB7, which is where we pulled the flake out of whatever that was. They've asked us to penetrate through the alluvial flow or rock or whatever it is on top to try and get a better sample.
We will lower it down into place, hook up the motor, grind on it a little bit,
and get something done.
We did running blaze trying to find a good vantage point into the gorge, and finally we did. Well, after 5 years, I'm finally standing on the western edge of the Hoare Gorge here on Mount Ararat. And let me give you a shot of what that looks like. As you can see, it's full of crevasses. It's a fast-moving glacier. This is really crazy crevasse in the center of this gorge. And if the Ark had come to rest anywhere near the lip of the Hoare Gorge, it would be chewed up. It's really quite discouraging. You stare right into those huge crevasses and you say there's just no way. If it is anywhere in the gorge, it's got to be lower down.
My primary goal at the summit was to get 2 drill cores, and we were able to get 2 cores within 3 hours. But they were covered in, of course, all the mud from the coring, and I just said to the boys, let's not tamper with the samples. Let's let the scientists look at the samples. What it is, it is. We'll find out when we get down.
They got the core, he came back down. That was his purpose, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
I had one task. I believe that I accomplished it, and I'm happy for that.
This is the core. This is obviously basalt. What were we hitting? We're hitting basalt. Now we know what we were looking for is not there.
Thomas Edison once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Failure is a teacher, just a stepping stone on the road to success.
Okay. Dr. Bryant and I, has agreed that it's done. We have to call it finished. Doesn't mean it's the final chapter in search for the Ark.
Just because we don't find something doesn't mean it's not here. It means it's more difficult to find. Today is not the chapter closing day. It's just another day that we can add more information to the components that we have and build upon that.
We drilled, we got cores, and the evidence was very negative. We don't understand why.
We've exhausted all of our options at this particular time, the technology that we have available, and the time that we have available.
We're off.
Yes, disappointment, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is finding out what the facts are. And if we've accomplished that, then that's good.
Few things are as universal as man's need for exploration. Something ingrained in our DNA calls us to search, to find.
Johnny.
To discover things unknown about our past, which then become our guide for the future.
Did it. That's a long haul. It is a long haul.
For thousands of years, man has embarked on this incredible journey of discovery. And in doing so, ultimately finds himself.
We may find it one day, we may find it next year.
but us being together and our journey up there and back and how that changed our lives is really the story.
So for me, it's really been a journey of trying to discover what's in my heart, what motivates me. I feel very happy without even discovering the Ark.
When you're coming down the mountain, a lot of things are rolling through your mind. Were we successful? Did we come up with anything to take us further down the road? In my mind, scientifically, did we just waste a lot of money? Did we waste a lot of time and risk people's lives? But there were times I just felt like, wow, I'm as closest to heaven I can be on earth. I do feel like I had a mountaintop experience with the Lord.
And you come back down and you didn't find it. It's kind of like going to the Super Bowl and losing. You're still a player, you still gave it all, you left it all on the field, but you just didn't win.
The expedition was not a disappointment. We scientifically ruled out the Eastern Plateau, and we got our team down safely.
We did it together. I could not have made it without the guys that I climbed with.
The men I've met on this expedition, you can get deep with them, and that's what you look for in life.
Very glad to be back down here. I need to get my strength back. Eat. The Ark to me represents a dream. If you want it and you feel called to it, go do it.
The most emotional experience for me was the summiting. I was overwhelmed with it. I'm going to get emotional right now because it was a goal I set out to do, and God blessed me to be able to do it. And I knew even if we didn't find the Ark, just climbing a mountain of that magnitude is something I'm going to remember and my family's going to remember for the rest of our lives.
I may not have found Noah's Ark, but I found, I think, something much more important and much more lasting, and that is, I believe that in the process of trying to discover the Ark, I've discovered more about myself and I discovered more about God.
There will be a time when that structure will be revealed. It's there. It's been there for a purpose and for a certain time. It will be revealed.
Why would God want you to find the Ark? I don't know that he wants us to find the Ark, but I am fairly convinced that he wants us to look. And in that sense, yeah, it's very much more about the journey than discovery.
With the Kurdish men, it's some of the closest friendships I've got. I mean, when you go through what we've gone through together, it does something to you to make you close.
As the shepherds return with their flocks and families prepare for the winter ahead, the beliefs they hold remain unchallenged.
I'll never regret being able to say, I've been there, I've done that, I stood up there on the mountain, I've looked for Noah's Ark.
The hunger's still there. It's still something that needs to be searched for.
Will we find it? I don't know. Will it be found? I don't know that it's there to be found. Did it exist? Yes, I believe that. Does that change whether or not we should be looking for it? Not at all.
Inside your head, you got a voice that sounds, you won't get past this one, you won't win your freedom. It's like a constant war, and you wanna settle that score. But you're bruised and beaten, and you feel defeated. This goes out to the heaviest heart. Fight.
I don't think it matters whether or not you could ever find the Ark. I think the value today is what could it teach us about the way our responsibility to safeguard creation, the way Noah, in the story, safeguarded creation, brought all the animals through the flood. You look at what's happening to the earth today in terms of the massive extinction event that's going on our watch, and we're not doing the job that Noah was tasked with doing. And so to me, the resonance and value of the story today is that it's a powerful message about what our responsibilities are to safeguard creation.
The search will continue.